If you lived in the 14th century, your days would be measured not by clocks or calendars, but by the bell of the church, the turning of the seasons, and the quiet rhythm of survival. But if the whispers of neighbors followed you, if your habits seemed unusual, if your presence carried a certain mystery, they might call you something else. A healer, perhaps, a midwife, or, in the darker corners of fearful minds, a witch. This is not a story of fire and trials, not of horror or spectacle, but of the quiet life one might live beneath the weight of suspicion, a life both ordinary and shadowed. Tonight, let us walk together into that life. Imagine the shape of a village in this century. It is not yet a town nor fully isolated. A cluster of thatched roofs, leaning fences, smoke rising in thin lines against the pale sky. The heart of the village is not a marketplace, not yet. It is the church tower, a simple structure of stone, its bell rope coiled and waiting. From here, every direction leads outward to the houses, the lanes, the fields, and eventually the forest that stands like a wall of shadows at the edges of cultivated land. The houses are modest one-room cottages with walls of wattle and daub, timber frames that creak as they age, thatch pressed tightly against rain and wind. Doors are low, often crooked, so that even the tallest man must stoop when passing through. Within each cottage, a hearth smolders, ash from the night's fire pushed aside to reveal glowing embers that will be coaxed back into flame at dawn. Smoke begins to rise once more. It threads from each chimney in long, wavering lines, meeting the mist that clings to the ground. The village is alive with sound, though never loud. Hooves clop against the packed earth as a farmer leads a cart out toward the fields. Chickens scatter as children run past, their bare feet kicking mud. From inside cottages come muffled voices, words of prayer, instructions to children, reminders to fetch water from the well before the line grows too long. And above it all, faint but steady, is the tolling of the bell. 1, 2, 3. Slow peals, carrying over the thatch and fields, calling the faithful to prayer, marking the new day as sacred. The bell means different things to different ears. To the priest, it is the rhythm of his vocation. To the farmer, it is both prayer and reminder that the day must be spent in labor, in tilling and sowing. To you, should you live on the edge of the village, it is both familiar and distant, like a voice that welcomes, but never quite embraces. Dawn is not gentle for most. The day begins with work, as it always does. A woman stoops to milk a cow, the tin pail clattering softly against the animal's flank. A boy runs to the well with a wooden bucket, waiting among neighbors for his turn to draw the rope and hear the splash of water. Another gathers firewood from the damp edges of the forest, dragging branches heavy with dew. Bread is set to bake on stones, simple loaves that will fill the air with a faint sweetness. The grinding of hand mills can be heard, the stones turning slowly as barley and rye are crushed into flour. These sounds, grinding, plattering, crackling, form the true song of the village, a chorus of labor that greets the day before the sun fully rises. To walk through this village at dawn is to breathe in a mixture of scents, sharp and earthy. Smoke from damp wood, not yet fully aflame. The musk of animals kept in close quarters. Wet hay, fermenting slightly in the chill. Freshly drawn water, cool and metallic, and occasionally a sweeter note. Herbs hung to dry in kitchens, mint or rosemary that lingers near the doorway. These are not luxuries, but necessities, remedies for sickness, flavor for otherwise plain meals. To the villager, each scent carries meaning, a reminder of what must be done, what must be preserved. The sun has not yet risen fully, but the mist has begun to lift. It clings to the ground, rolling in slow waves across the fields. From a distance, the cottages seem to float above it, islands of thatch upon a pale sea. As the light strengthens, shadows take form, trees along the edge of the woods, the narrow lanes between homes, the silhouettes of villagers bent in work. Only here and there is brightness visible, the crimson thread of a woman's headscarf, the golden flicker of firelight through a doorway, the gleam of water as it spills from a bucket. It is not a dramatic scene, not painted in bold strokes. It is a life lived in subtler tones, in patience, in repetition. If you, in this imagined life, lived on the edge of this village, the morning would reach you differently. The bell's toll might arrive as a faint echo, the bustle of neighbors, a distant murmur. Your cottage stands slightly apart, where the fields give way to scrub and forest. The mist here is thicker, the light slower to arrive. You step outside, herbs drying on your door frame, and feel the weight of eyes upon you. Not directly, no one stares openly, but through glances quickly turned away. You are part of the village, and yet not. Needed, perhaps, for your knowledge of plants, of childbirth, of fevers, yet always spoken of in lowered tones, as though your presence demands caution. For now, it is only morning. The day is still innocent, still filled with work. But the way others see you already shapes the path your steps will take. There is, within all of this, a quiet sacredness, not in the sense of miracles or grandeur, but in the very rhythm of survival. Each act, fetching water, baking bread, tending animals, carries weight. Life is fragile, uncertain, often cruel. The plague has not yet struck here, or perhaps it has passed and left scars. But every villager knows how easily a harvest might fail, how swiftly fever might claim a child. And so, every ordinary task is infused with seriousness. Bread is not just food, but survival. A bucket of water is not just refreshment, but life itself. Even the first cry of the rooster is a reminder. Another day has been granted. Another chance to labor, to endure. Yet alongside the sacred, there is the shadow. Suspicion travels easily in a place so small. A failed harvest, an illness, a sudden storm, each demands explanation. And often it is the one who lives differently, who knows more than most, who carries the burden of blame. The morning light does not reveal this openly. It hides in whispers, in glances, in the faint stiffening of a neighbor's shoulders as you pass. To live here is to carry both belonging and distance, both familiarity and exile. By the time the sun rises fully, the village is awake in every corner. The smith has struck his first blow, the sound ringing across the square. Women sit at their thresholds, spinning wool, their hands moving as naturally as breathing. The world has not changed dramatically. It is the same as yesterday, and likely the same as tomorrow. Yet in these repetitions lies the life of the 14th century village, ordinary, fragile, enduring. And if you live here with the name witch whispered under breath, you live it too. The same bread, the same water, the same air filled with smoke and dew. You are part of it, even as you stand slightly apart. Thus the village at dawn, not grand, not violent, not filled with spectacle, just the quiet turning of another day. At the edge of the village, where the path narrows and the fields begin to surrender to wild growth, stands a house. It is not abandoned, though to the hurried glance it might appear so. Its roof is thatched, though uneven in places, patched with rushes gathered from the riverbank. Its walls are built of wattle and daub, streaked with the marks of seasons. Rains that have soaked, winds that have worn, sun that has bleached. It is not unlike the other cottages of the village, yet it stands apart, a little too far from the square, a little too close to the shadow of the forest. And because of this, it gathers to itself a certain reputation, a certain whisper. In every community, there are homes that lie at the margin. Sometimes it is simple necessity, land divided unevenly, a family too poor to live closer to the center, or the choice of one who prefers solitude. Yet once marked apart, the distance grows in meaning. What is first practical becomes symbolic. This house, this cottage, is not only at the edge of the fields, it is also at the edge of belonging. People pass it, but do not linger. Children dare each other to run to its door, then flee, laughing, as though from a danger they cannot name. When trouble comes to the village, illness, hunger, a poor harvest, eyes glance toward it, if only for a moment. Step within, and you find not a place of darkness, but one of warmth, cluttered with the ordinary and the necessary. A hearth glows at the center, its smoke curling up through a narrow hole in the roof. A table, rough-hewn, holds small earthen bowls, a knife worn thin by years of sharpening, and scraps of cloth folded neatly for use. Herbs hang from the beams, sage, thyme, rosemary, lavender, drying slowly in the smoke. Bundles of nettles and willow bark rest against the wall, waiting to be brewed into teas or poultices. Jars of honey stand beside clay pots of lard, tools of healing for wounds and fevers. There are no shelves of books, no secret tomes, only the memory of recipes carried in the mind, passed down from mother to daughter, neighbor to neighbor. The bed is little more than straw, covered in a patched wool blanket. In winter, it is shared with the cat that curls close for warmth, its purr filling the silence of the room. Here, life is not mystical, it is practical. Every object serves a purpose, every herb is gathered with intent. And yet, to eyes accustomed to simpler cottages bare of such things, this abundance may look suspicious, even strange. Step outside the door, and the path slopes downward toward the forest. Here the trees begin, oak and elm, birch and ash, standing tall and close together, their branches weaving shadows even in daylight. The forest is both gift and threat. It offers firewood, wild berries, mushrooms, and herbs, but it also shelters wolves, outlaws, and fears that have no shape. The villager who lives at its edge learns to walk the boundary carefully, to know which plants to gather, which mushrooms to avoid, which sounds in the undergrowth signal safety, and which signal danger. To others, this knowledge feels uncanny. For you, it is survival. The forest is not evil. It is alive, breathing, shifting. Yet, because it is unknown to many, it becomes a place of imagination, where spirits may dwell, where demons may lurk, where witches may find their power. And so, the house by the forest inherits the mystery of the woods themselves. Life in such a place is quieter than in the center of the village. You wake to the same rooster's call, but it comes faintly across the fields. The bell of the church sounds softer, as though muffled by distance. What you hear most is the wind through trees, the crack of branches, the murmur of a brook nearby. Your chores are the same as any villager's, fetching water, tending a garden, feeding animals, but they are done in solitude. The well is further, the market a longer walk. Much of what you need you gather yourself, herbs from the woods, eggs from hens scratching in the dirt, milk from a goat tethered near the door. This solitude is not chosen to defy others, but it is chosen all the same. There is peace in the space between yourself and the village, in the quiet that fills the hours when the fields are still and only the crows circle above. Yet solitude does not mean invisibility. In fact, to live apart is often to be more visible. The villagers notice your comings and goings. They notice when smoke rises from your chimney, when it does not. They notice when you return from the forest with a bundle of herbs, or when you spend too long walking alone. Their noticing is not always cruel. Sometimes it is merely curiosity or caution. But in a world where the unusual is often feared, curiosity can shift into suspicion with ease. A child falls ill, and someone remembers seeing you gather plants. A cow fails to give milk, and someone recalls the way you passed by silent a week before. These things are not connected, but in the weaving of stories they become threads of one cloth, and so the house at the edge is never only a home. It is a symbol, a reminder, a place where explanations are sought for what cannot be explained. Inside, though, life continues in small acts of care. A woman in pain during childbirth comes to your door, her husband uneasy but desperate. You brew a tea of raspberry leaf. You murmur encouragement. You place cool cloths upon her brow. When the child is born healthy, thanks are given, but quietly, sometimes reluctantly, as though gratitude might risk acknowledgement of power. Another day, a boy arrives with a swollen ankle. You wrap it in willow bark poultice, teach him to rest. If he heals, the family is pleased. If not, whispers may follow. Perhaps it was worse than a sprain, or perhaps the healer's hand failed him. Healing is both gift and burden. Success brings no lasting trust. Failure deepens suspicion. To live in this house is to live in that tension, always useful, never fully embraced. When evening comes, solitude deepens. The village square glows with firelight, voices rising in laughter, gossip, argument. From your door, you hear it faintly, like a distant hum. Closer at hand is the rustle of trees, the hoot of an owl, the crackle of your own fire. You eat alone, a simple meal of bread, cheese, and herbs. The cat curls at your feet. The night stretches long, and in the silence you think, perhaps too much. For in solitude the mind becomes its own company, wandering through memory, prayer, or fear. And when the villagers speak of you, they imagine you here, in this very moment, alone, surrounded by herbs, staring into firelight. To them, the picture is haunting. To you, it is simply life. The house at the edge holds a paradox. You are part of the village, needed when illness comes, when remedies are required, when knowledge of plants is sought. And yet, you are never fully part of it. You are within and without, tethered and untethered. This balance may endure for years, uneventful, ordinary, but it may also tip swiftly when fear grows stronger than need. For now, though, it is morning, or evening, or one of the countless days between, and the house stands, weathered, quiet, enduring. And so, the house at the edge is both shelter and burden, a place of warmth and of whispers, a life ordinary, yet shadowed by the gaze of others. There are many kinds of knowledge in the 14th century. Some is written in books, locked away in monasteries, or guarded in the halls of lords. Some is spoken aloud, passed in sermons from the pulpit. But much of it, perhaps most of it, lives in the hands of ordinary people. Hands that plant, hands that weave, hands that mend, hands that heal. If you live in the house at the edge of the village, your knowledge is of this last kind, not written, not sung in hymns, but worked into the muscle and memory of your fingers. Each day your hands move through familiar tasks, gathering, grinding, boiling, binding. What to others seems mysterious is, to you, nothing more than labor, patient, ordinary, endlessly repeated. At first light, before the villagers stir fully, you set out toward the meadow. A small basket in hand, your steps take you through the damp grass, each blade tipped with dew. The air is cool, touched with the faint sweetness of wildflowers. Birds call from hedgerows, their song high and thin against the silence of the early hour. You kneel to gather plantain leaves, broad and green, their veins running like rivers. These will soothe wounds and insect bites. Further along, nettles grow, their sting avoided by careful touch. Once boiled, they become both food and tonic, rich in strength for those weakened by illness. You know where to find yarrow, its feathery leaves used to staunch bleeding. You recognize the soft purple of violets, which can be brewed for coughs. Each plant is part of a quiet map in your mind, a knowledge of where and when to gather, of what is safe and what is dangerous. To a passerby, your stooped figure in the field, your hands plucking green stems into a basket, may look unusual. To you, it is as natural as drawing breath. Not everything is gathered from the wild. Behind your cottage is a small patch of earth worked by your hands season after season. Here grows rosemary, its scent sharp and clean. Mint, spreading quickly, eager to overtake its neighbors. Onions, hardy and reliable. A row of beans climbing rough poles. The garden is both food and medicine, sustenance and cure. It is also memory. For many of the seeds were handed down, given by a mother, a grandmother, a neighbor, now long gone. Each plant carries not only its own properties, but the story of how it was tended, shared, remembered. As you pull weeds, loosen soil, or tie the climbing beans, your hands follow motions repeated countless times before. The work is simple, but it holds within it the weight of generations. Inside the cottage, the work continues, The mortar and pestle wait upon the table, their surfaces worn smooth by years of use. Into them you place dried leaves of sage, pounding slowly, the steady rhythm of stone upon stone echoing in the quiet room. The powder will be steeped in water, strained through cloth, and given to a neighbor who suffers fever. Nearby, a small pot simmers over the fire. Willow bark floats within, releasing its bitterness into the broth. This will ease pain, though few understand why. To them it is not bark, but a touch of something strange, something between earth and spirit. Your hands move without hesitation. You tie herbs into small bundles, wrap them in cloth, mark them not with written words, but with memory. Each bundle, each jar holds a story. A woman's childbirth eased, a child's cough soothed, a wound bound tight. Perhaps the most delicate work of hands comes when new life enters the world. When a woman labors in pain, it is often you who is called, though sometimes reluctantly, as though asking for help might invite risk. Yet when pain becomes too great, hesitation vanishes. You bring with you not books of medicine, but knowledge, carried in gesture, in tone of voice, in touch. You know how to brew raspberry leaf tea to steady contractions, how to warm stones and wrap them to ease aching backs, how to place hands upon a brow and murmur words of comfort. When the child is born safely, cries filling the small cottage, your hands are praised, if only briefly. But if the child is stillborn, or if the mother falters, your hands are not forgiven. In those moments, suspicion returns, as though your touch carried both healing and harm. And so the work of your hands is always double-edged, honored in need, feared in memory. What you do is not magic. It is ordinary work, the work of countless women across countless villages. Yet in the 14th century, what is ordinary is often seen through the lens of belief. To grind herbs is practical, but to others it may seem like conjuring. To brew willow bark into tea is science not yet named, but to neighbors it is a hidden art. To ease childbirth through herbs and patience is care, but to those who fear it may seem unnatural. Your hands become the focus of these stories, the same hands that tend a garden, mend a torn cloth, cradle a newborn, are the hands others imagine stirring unseen forces. It is often men who whisper first, though not always. The priest in the church may preach of temptation, of powers that come from the devil rather than God. A farmer may eye you warily when his crops fail, thinking of the times he saw you walking near his field. A husband may bristle at the influence you have in his wife's birthing chamber, where he is powerless, excluded. To them, the work of your hands unsettles. It crosses into spaces they cannot control, touches mysteries they cannot explain. And so suspicion grows, but from what they imagine in the silence between your actions. Yet among women, there is often quiet gratitude. They know the value of your hands. They have felt their touch in moments of pain, in nights of fever, in the long hours of childbirth. They know that without such knowledge, many more would be lost. But their thanks is often hidden, spoken in whispers, or shown in small gifts, a loaf of bread left at your door, a skein of wool pressed into your hand. Gratitude is tempered by caution, for to be too closely associated with you is to risk sharing your suspicion. And so the work of your hands exists in a strange in-between, necessary, respected, but never celebrated openly. The rhythm of your hands follows the seasons. In spring, they dig and plant, setting seeds into soil. In summer, they gather herbs at their strongest, hanging them to dry in bundles. In autumn, they preserve, pickling, salting, storing roots and leaves for the lean months ahead. In winter, they bind wounds, brew teas, and mend clothing by the fire. Every season brings new labor, new tasks, new chances for both gratitude and suspicion. The work never ends, but neither does it change. Hands repeat what they have always done, and what they will continue to do. Your hands carry more than work. They carry memory. You remember how your mother showed you to strip bark from willow, how your grandmother taught you to tell safe mushrooms from deadly ones. You remember the births you attended, the wounds you bound, the times your work was successful, and the times it was not. Every line upon your palms, every scar across your fingers is a record of this life. Others may see mystery, but you see memory written in flesh and muscle. At the end of the day, your hands are tired, stained with soil, smelling faintly of herbs. You wash them in a wooden bowl of cool water, rubbing until the stains fade, though never entirely. The skin is rough, nails short and uneven, palms lined deeply. You sit by the fire, hands folded, watching the flames dance. They rest only briefly, for tomorrow they will return to their endless work. And yet, in their quiet rest, there is dignity. These are not hands of sorcery, nor of sin. They are hands of labor, of care, of survival. And so the work of hands defines this life, ordinary, practical, endlessly repeated. But in the eyes of others, it is never simply what it is. In their fear, in their stories, they shape it into something more, something darker. Life in the 14th century is not measured by clocks. It is measured by light and darkness, by the sowing and reaping, by the turn of leaves and the fall of snow. A person's world is bound to the seasons, each carrying its own labor, its own worries, its own fragile joys. For you, living at the edge of the village, the seasons are companions. They dictate when you rise, what you gather, what you mend, and what you prepare against the unknown months to come. Each shift of weather changes the work of your hands, the food on your table, and the way your neighbors look upon you. When winter loosens its grip, the thaw comes slowly, almost hesitantly. Snow melts into mud. The river swells with icy water. The air smells damp, raw, promising life but carrying the ache of cold in its breath. For villagers, spring is labor. Fields must be plowed, seeds sown, fences mended. The oxen, thin from lean months, are driven once again into furrows. Men strain with the plow. Women scatter seed. Children chase crows from the fields. For you, spring means gathering what first stirs. Nettles push up, sharp and stinging, but nourishing when boiled. Dandelion greens appear, bitter yet cleansing. Birch sap runs clear and sweet, a tonic for those weakened by the long, dark months. You collect these carefully, your basket filling with the first fragile offerings of the year. There is hope in spring, but also fear. Too much rain and seeds rot. Too little and nothing grows. You hear prayers murmured in church, hands lifted toward heaven, asking for balance. Yet quietly, some eyes glance at you, as though your walks into the fields might sway the weather. As the sun climbs higher, days stretch long. Summer is abundance, though it comes with its own weight of labor. Wheat rises in golden fields, barley ripens, beans climb their poles. Gardens overflow with herbs and greens. Your hands are busy every hour. Morning is for gathering plantain leaves, yarrow, mint, chamomile. Afternoon for drying and binding. Evenings for brewing teas, straining tinctures, storing jars in dark corners of the cottage. In summer, illness shifts. No longer the fevers of winter, but stomach sickness from spoiled food, injuries from long days in the fields, childbirth under the heavy heat. You are called often, though sometimes only in secret. A woman slips to your door with quiet urgency, asking for a tea to steady her husband's stomach. Another begs for herbs to calm her restless child. They come grateful, but always wary, leaving quickly before neighbors can notice. Summer nights are thick with warmth, crickets singing, the scent of hay heavy in the air. You sit outside watching fireflies blink in the dark, your hands resting after long labor. Abundance can turn swiftly. A storm may flatten the fields. A pest may devour the crop. And when such misfortune comes, fear seeks a human face to blame. If summer is life in full bloom, autumn is its drawing in, its gathering close. Fields blaze gold, then brown. Trees let fall their fruit, orchards heavy with apples and pears. The air sharpens, cool and brisk, carrying the smell of smoke from hearths preparing for colder nights. For you, autumn is preservation. You dry the last herbs, hang roots from beams, fill jars with pickled vegetables. You tie onions into braids, stack firewood against the wall, cover the garden with straw. Everything is gathered, stored, prepared. For winter's hunger always lurks ahead. The villagers too work with urgency. Harvest must be brought in before frost. Men swing sickles through wheat, women bind sheaves, children chase stray stalks. The church bell tolls harvest festivals, giving thanks, blessing bread baked from the first flour. Autumn is also the time of reckoning. If the harvest is good, relief spreads through the village. Smiles, songs, laughter echo across the fields. If poor, worry shadows every home, and in that worry, suspicion grows sharper. Who has food stored away? Who has more than they ought? Whose cottage by the woods seems suspiciously well supplied? Your preparations, though simple and earned, sometimes draw glances. How do you always seem to have herbs when needed? How do your jars stay full? What do your hands know that others do not? Winter comes not with a single day, but with a steady encroaching. Frost at dawn, ice forming on the edges of buckets, then the first snow, light and thin, followed by more, heavier, relentless. Soon the world lies silent under white. Winter is hunger. Even the best harvest cannot fully ease its bite. Bread grows harder, meat scarcer, vegetables wrinkled and shrunken. Bellies ache with want. Firewood dwindles. Illness spreads easily in close, cold rooms. For you, winter is when neighbors knock most. Coughs worsen, fevers rise, joints stiffen from damp cold. You brew teas, wrap poultices, tend the sick. Some recover, some do not. It is also in winter that suspicion sharpens most dangerously. When a child dies, when an old man does not wake, when stores run empty, fear seeks a cause. Whispers rise more quickly in the stillness of snow. And your cottage at the edge, with smoke curling from its chimney, with herbs hanging in its rafters, becomes an easy answer. Yet winter also brings its own quiet beauty. Nights are long, stars sharp against the black sky. Snow muffles the world into silence. By your fire, hands wrapped around a clay cup of warm broth, you watch shadows flicker across the walls. There is peace here, even as fear coils just beyond the door. And so the year turns spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. Each season shaping labor, shaping fear, shaping survival. To you, the rhythm is ordinary, a circle repeated year upon year. But to others, that rhythm sometimes feels fragile, easily broken, easily threatened. And when it falters, when hunger strikes, when storms rage, it is easier to believe that someone nearby has disturbed the balance than to accept that nature itself is beyond control. Thus, the cycle of seasons is also the cycle of suspicion. Helped in summer, questioned in autumn, blamed in winter, forgotten in spring, until the circle begins again. The seasons define the life of the village. They define your life too. Each shift in weather is written not in calendars, but in the work of hands, the weight of hunger, the rise and fall of whispers. And as each season returns, so too do the stories, never the same, yet always familiar, circling, circling, like the turning of the earth itself. It begins softly, almost too softly to notice. A glance, held a moment longer than necessary, a pause in conversation as you pass by. The quiet hush of voices, broken quickly when you turn your head. These are not yet accusations. They are not yet words spoken aloud with certainty. They are only whispers. But whispers have a way of growing, of weaving themselves into the fabric of thought until they are more real than fact. When you walk through the village, carrying your basket of herbs or leading your goat by a rope, you feel the air shift around you. Children play until they see you, then quiet themselves, their eyes wide, their game interrupted. Women drawing water from the well fall silent, their hands still, then resume speaking only when your footsteps have passed. This silence is not always cruel. Sometimes it is nervous, sometimes curious. But silence itself is a kind of speech. It says, "We see you." It says, "You are different." And over time, it gathers weight. A woman's child wakes screaming in the night. She remembers that you passed her door the day before. A man's cow falls ill. He recalls you glancing toward his field. These things are coincidences, no more. But in the mind, coincidences are stitched into patterns, and patterns become stories. She was near when it happened. She looked at him strangely. She was gathering herbs the night before the storm. None of these are accusations. They are only words, shared in low tones, passed between neighbors as one might pass a secret. And yet, the more they are told, the firmer they become. Stories need only repetition to turn into truth. It is not only the words that change, it is the eyes. From the corner of your vision, you notice them, quick glances through shutters, heads turning as you walk past, men pausing in their work to follow you with their gaze. In the market, you feel them most sharply. The weight of watching, as you select beans or offer a coin for bread. The baker's hand hesitates before placing the loaf in yours. The woman selling eggs avoids your eyes, though she accepts your money. Even the priest, standing tall in his robes at the church door, lets his eyes rest upon you a moment too long, his lips pressed into a thin line. It is not yet judgment, not yet. But watching can wound as surely as words, for in the gaze of others you feel your place shifting, from neighbor to question, to doubt. Sometimes the whispers take shape in a word, not shouted, not spoken aloud in your presence, but drifting, carried by the wind. Witch. The word is not used lightly. It is not a casual insult. It is a dangerous word, heavy with fear, heavy with centuries of belief. To call someone witch is to place them at the border between human and inhuman, between safe and dangerous. It is to suggest that what happens around them is not mere chance, but the work of their hand, their will. At first, the word appears in stories told by children. A child points toward your cottage and says, "That's where the witch lives." The others laugh, daring each other to step closer. But children echo what they hear, and soon the word is repeated by their mothers, whispered behind doors, carried into the ears of their fathers. The word is not shouted yet, but it lingers, hovering, waiting. It is a strange thing to be both needed and feared. For even as whispers grow, your door is knocked upon. A man comes in the dark, asking for something to ease his wife's labor pains. A woman brings her child, feverish, begging for a tea to cool him. They come because you have knowledge they lack, because your hands can sometimes do what theirs cannot. But their gratitude is edged with unease. They accept your remedies, thank you quickly, then leave without lingering. And if the cure does not come swiftly, if the illness deepens, the blame does not fall upon the sickness, it falls upon the hands that tried to heal. Helping becomes a burden. Each gift of care carries the risk of suspicion. Each remedy is a gamble that it may save or condemn you in the eyes of those who asked for it. Markets are the heart of village life. Here goods are traded, news shared, bonds woven. But for you, the market becomes a place of unease. As you walk among the stalls, voices lower. Sellers busy themselves with tasks, avoiding your eyes. You feel the space around you widen, people stepping slightly aside, as though unwilling to brush against you. Once, a woman drops her bundle of carrots when you approach. She bends to gather them, but not before crossing herself quickly, as if to shield against some unseen harm. Another time, a man mutters a prayer under his breath as you pass, his hand brushing the small cross at his neck. You say nothing. You gather what you need, offer your coin, and walk home. But inside, the silence presses heavy. The market, once a place of life and connection, has become another stage where whispers circle like crows above a field. At night, the whispers feel louder, though they are only echoes in your mind. The village, seen from your door, glows faintly with firelight, the sound of voices carrying across the fields. You cannot hear their words, but you imagine them. Perhaps they speak of harvest, of weather, of children. Or perhaps, tonight, they speak of you. The forest behind your cottage rustles with unseen life. The wind sighs through branches. An owl calls. These sounds should comfort you, for they are constant, familiar. But in the hush between them, you hear the imagined murmur of your name, repeated, reshaped, retold. It is in these hours that solitude feels heaviest. Not chosen, but pressed upon you. Not peace, but isolation. For all this, you are still part of the village. You still walk its paths, attend its feasts, bring grain to its mill. You are not cast out, not yet. The whispers exist alongside ordinary life, woven into it, beneath it. But belonging is fragile, a thread stretched too thin. It may hold, or it may snap. And with each glance, each whispered word, each muttered prayer, you feel the thread weakening. Suspicion rarely begins with a single spark. It gathers slowly, quietly, like storm clouds on the horizon. For now, the clouds are only forming. The air is heavy, but no rain falls. The whispers are not yet shouts. The watching is not yet accusation. But you feel it. The storm beneath the surface. The uneasy waiting. And you know that when hunger strikes, when sickness spreads, when misfortune falls, those whispers will rise. And those who watched silently will speak aloud. For now, you live in the space between, needed but mistrusted, part of the village, yet apart from it, surrounded by whispers and watchers, walking the narrow line between belonging and blame. And though you cannot silence the whispers, you learn to move gently, quietly, as though your very life depends upon the softness of your step. Fear is not always sudden. It grows, like ivy upon stone, creeping slowly, almost unnoticed, until the wall is covered and the shape beneath is lost. In the village, fear grows in much the same way, first as whispers, then as glances, then as stories. And from stories, fear begins to take form. You can feel it in the way people look at you, in the way they hold their children closer when you pass, in the way the air itself seems to shift as you walk through the square. Fear has no face, and yet it is everywhere. The human mind fills silence with stories. When a child falls ill, when a storm destroys the harvest, when a man's ox refuses to pull the plow, the mind seeks an answer. To say it happened because it happened is unsatisfying, frightening in its own way. The mind wants cause. The mind wants reason. And so, it begins to weave shadows. Perhaps it was the herbs you gathered. Perhaps it was the way you looked at someone the day before. Perhaps it was the smoke that rose from your chimney at a strange hour of night. Fear is shaped not by fact, but by imagination. And imagination, once stirred, can be darker than truth. Fear has its own vocabulary. You hear it in fragments. She knows things. She was there when it happened. She doesn't pray like the rest of us. These are not direct accusations, not yet. They are words heavy with suggestion, designed to linger, to plant unease. Fear speaks in half-truths, in unfinished sentences, in tones lowered just enough to exclude you. Over time, the vocabulary grows sharper, words like unnatural, cursed, dangerous. Each carries weight. Each shapes how others see you, and how you begin to see yourself. Fear looks for signs, a black cat passing the doorway, a jar of herbs spilled upon the ground, a sudden wind that lifts your hair as you walk. To others, these are no longer ordinary things. They are marks, symbols, evidence. If your goat bleats strangely at night, neighbors hear it as an omen. If your fire smokes heavily, they see it as a sign of secret work. If a bird circles your roof, they whisper of spirits drawn to your door. Fear makes the world itself complicit. Every sound, every shadow, every accident can be claimed as proof. The signs do not reveal fear. Fear creates the signs. Even the children begin to shape fear into play. They dare each other to run to your door, to knock and flee, shrieking with laughter. They circle your cottage, chanting nonsense words, mimicking spells they imagine you to know. They do not understand the weight of what they repeat. To them, it is a game, a thrill in the safety of daylight. But their laughter carries into the ears of adults who frown and mutter that children sense what is hidden, that children, in their innocence, see truth more clearly than grown eyes. Thus, the play of children feeds the belief of adults, and the cycle of fear strengthens. There was a time when neighbors would greet you, if not warmly, then politely. They would nod as you passed, exchange a few words at the well, perhaps even smile faintly. That time is fading. Now, greetings are fewer. Some do not look up when you pass. Others turn deliberately away, pretending not to notice you. The change is not sudden, but it is steady, a turning, one by one, until the circle of neighbors becomes a circle of distance. The space between you grows wider, not measured in steps, but in trust. Where once there was uneasy tolerance, there is now wary avoidance. And in avoidance, fear finds its firmest ground. On Sundays, you still walk to the church, for to remain away would be more dangerous still. You take your place among the others, your head bowed in prayer. But even here, fear follows. You feel the eyes upon you. Some watch to see if your lips move with the prayers. Others glance to be sure you kneel at the right time, stand at the right moment, cross yourself with the proper hand. The smallest hesitation, the faintest pause may be noted, remembered, retold. Even the priest's sermons begin to carry a sharper edge. He speaks more often of sin, of temptation, of the snares of the devil. He warns that evil may not always come from outside the village, but may dwell within, hidden, among familiar faces. His gaze sweeps the congregation, and though it never lingers directly upon you, you feel it all the same. At times you sense watchers outside your home, a flicker of movement near the hedge, a shadow shifting against the tree line. Perhaps it is only imagination. Perhaps it is only the restless wanderings of animals in the dark. But at times you are certain. Someone stands there, looking toward your door, their breath misting in the cold. They do not knock. They do not call out. They only watch, then vanish into the dark. And in the morning, you find footprints pressed into the earth, leading toward the village. Such watching is not idle curiosity. It is the shaping of fear into vigilance, into readiness. For when fear grows large enough, it does not remain passive. It begins to prepare itself for action. Even in sleep, fear does not leave you. It enters your dreams. You dream of eyes that watch from the forest, of voices whispering your name, of fires lit in the square. You wake with your heart racing, the room silent, save for the crackle of cooling embers in the hearth. And though you tell yourself it is only dream, the unease clings to you through the day. For dreams, too, can be shaped by fear, reflecting what the waking mind cannot push aside. Fear is no longer only whispers. It is glances, avoidance, sermons, children's games, footprints outside your door. It has taken form, shape, body. It is no longer a shadow without outline. It is becoming something solid. And though no one speaks the words aloud in accusation, you can feel them waiting. The word witch. Heavy, dangerous, sharpened by repetition, hovers close, ready to be spoken with conviction. You sense that the circle is tightening, that the space for belonging grows smaller each day. And you know that once fear has found its shape, it will not easily be unmade. Almost like a whisper, fear is not a storm that passes quickly. It is a season that settles in, reshaping the land, changing how all things grow. And now, in the village, the season of fear has begun. There comes a point when silence can no longer contain what people believe. Whispers may circle endlessly, hidden in corners, carried between neighbors, spoken only in half-sentences. But whispers are restless things. They long to be heard aloud, to be given shape and weight. And when fear grows heavy enough, it presses upon the tongue until words spill out. In the village, that moment arrives slowly, like mist thickening in the fields. At first, only fragments slip into the air, but soon they take clearer form. The word witch is no longer only a secret spoken behind shutters. It drifts, it hovers, it lingers in the open air. And once spoken, it cannot be unspoken. The first accusation is rarely direct. It hides itself in questions, in tones of wonder, in words that seem harmless but are not. Why does her garden grow when others fail? Why is her goat still fat when ours are thin? Why does she always seem to have herbs no matter the season? These questions are not asked to you. They are asked of one another, in the market, at the well, after church. But the sound carries. The questions become sharper. Why does sickness follow where she walks? Why do storms strike after she has been in the fields? Soon, it is no longer question, but suggestion. No longer suggestion, but claim. She has a hand in this. She is the reason. The air itself seems thicker with the weight of these words. It is in the square that words find their greatest power. Here, men and women gather at day's end, their voices mingling, their fears reinforced by the presence of others. Alone, a thought may feel uncertain. In a crowd, the same thought feels like truth. One speaks of the cow that sickened. Another recalls the strange herbs seen hanging in your doorway. Another mutters that his dreams have been troubled since passing your cottage. Each story adds to the others. Each retelling strengthens the shape of fear. In the market, the change becomes unmistakable. A woman who once sold you bread now shakes her head, saying, "There is none left." though loaves still lie upon her stall. A man who once traded beans avoids your eyes, his arms folded, his face turned away. When you offer coin, hands hesitate before touching yours. When you walk past, conversations hush, then resume more quickly once you are gone. The market, once uneasy but tolerable, has turned colder. It is not that every voice joins the chorus. Some remain silent. Some even frown at the harsher words. But silence does not shield. Silence cannot scatter what already hangs heavy in the air. Accusation grows bolder in moments of misfortune. When a fire takes a barn, when a child falls suddenly ill, when hail strikes a field of crops. In those moments, fear sharpens into blame. She passed that way yesterday. She looked at him strangely. She cursed under her breath. The words are not true, not in the way truth should be measured, but they are believed, and in belief they become as strong as fact. At first, the accusations are spoken only when you are absent, but slowly the words begin to reach your ears. A man mutters "witch" as you pass. A group of children sing it in a cruel rhyme, their laughter cutting through the air. Once, a woman spits upon the ground as you walk by, her eyes burning with a mixture of fear and hatred. The word has taken flight. It no longer hides. Even in the church, the change is felt. The priest's sermons grow heavier, more pointed. He speaks of wolves in sheep's clothing, of temptations in familiar faces, of evil that walks quietly until it is named. His words do not name you, they never do, but they do not need to. The villagers know where their thoughts already turn. The sermon gives shape to what they feel, gives weight to what they fear. And when they leave the church, their glances linger longer, their whispers carry further. At night, the watching grows more open. You see the glint of eyes at the edge of your garden, hear the crunch of footsteps retreating when you step outside. Once, a stone is thrown against your door, clattering sharply in the silence. Another time, a dead crow is left at the edge of your path. These are not accidents. They are messages, signs that suspicion has stepped beyond words into action. Fear, once hidden, has learned to show its face. There is little you can say in your own defense. To deny is only to confirm suspicion in the minds of those who already believe. To remain silent is to seem secretive. To argue is to appear angry. Every path leads back to the same place. The burden of proof is not yours to give, for proof is not what is sought. What is sought is reassurance. Reassurance that fear has a target, that misfortune has a cause, that the fragile balance of life can be explained. And in their eyes, you have become that explanation. Not all turn against you. Some still nod quietly when you pass, though their eyes dart quickly away. Some still knock at your door in secret, asking for remedies, begging you not to tell. A few even murmur words of kindness, though they do so cautiously, as if fearful of being seen. But kindness is quieter than accusation. A whisper of defense is drowned by a shout of blame. And so, even those who doubt the stories feel the pressure to remain silent, to step back, to let the louder voices shape the air. The village is divided, but it is the division of silence against noise, of doubt against certainty. And certainty always carries further. You begin to live differently. Your steps are softer, your words fewer. You avoid the market when you can, tending more to your garden, gathering herbs in the forest at dawn before others rise. You keep to yourself, hoping invisibility will shield you. But invisibility is not easily won when fear already has your name. Every absence is noticed, every silence interpreted. If you are unseen, it is because you are plotting. If you are quiet, it is because you are hiding. And so, the days grow fragile. Each one feels like it may be the day when silence breaks fully, when words turn to judgment spoken aloud. Accusations do not yet ring through the streets. No one has yet stood in the square to call your name. But the storm is gathering. The air feels charged, heavy, restless. Every whisper adds to its weight. Every glance strengthens its force. Every word of the priest, every cruel child's chant, every stone against your door brings it closer. You live now at the edge of that storm, feeling its presence in every hour, waiting for the moment when it breaks. Accusations are in the air. They drift, they circle, they gather. And though they are not yet thunder, they are the sound of thunder's approach. There is a difference between words spoken in corners and words spoken aloud in the open. There is a difference between whispers carried by wind and a summons carried by hand. When the church bell rings, when the priest's voice calls, when the elders gather, something changes. Fear that was once scattered now begins to take form. And it is then, on a morning heavy with silence, that you hear it, the first summons. It comes simply, no fanfare, no great declaration, only a knock at the door. Not the hurried knock of a neighbor seeking herbs, not the tentative tap of a child returning a lost tool. This is firmer, measured, a knock meant to be heard. When you open the door, the messenger stands there. Perhaps he is young, still uneasy with the task given to him, or perhaps he is older, already practiced at carrying words that change the course of lives. In his hand, a slip of parchment, not ornate, just a few words written by the priest or the council. You are to appear at the church hall, or in the square at a certain hour. The reason is not written. It does not need to be. You already know. The messenger avoids your eyes as he hands it to you. His face is careful, expressionless. And then he is gone. The hours between the summons and the walk feel endless. You move through them quietly, hands brushing over familiar tools, glancing at herbs you once touched with ease, listening to the silence of your cottage as if it might speak to you. When the time comes, you step into the path. Each footfall feels heavier than it should. The way to the church or hall is not long, but it stretches now, as if the village itself has grown larger. As you pass, doors open slightly, eyes peer out, then vanish. Children pause their play, watching silently. A woman with a basket of apples lowers her head, but does not greet you. The air is thick with expectation, with the weight of what is about to unfold. The hall is not grand. Its wooden beams creak. Its walls carry the scent of smoke and wax. But today, it feels vast. At the far end sits the priest, flanked by 2 or 3 elders. Their faces are solemn, grave, arranged into lines of authority. Around the room, villagers gather. Some press closer, eager to hear. Others stand further back, arms folded, unsure. The air is filled with murmurs, quickly hushed when the priest raises his hand. This is not yet trial. This is questioning. But questioning in these times carries the weight of judgment already. The priest begins softly, his voice measured. He asks about your herbs, about your cures, about your knowledge of roots and plants. Why do you keep so many? Why do you know what others do not? The elders lean forward, their faces unreadable. Then the questions shift. They ask about your neighbor's misfortunes. Did you see the cow before it sickened? Were you present when the fire broke out? Did you quarrel with the mother of the child who fell ill? Each question is asked gently, but the gentleness does not ease the weight. Behind each one lies an assumption, a suspicion. Behind each one waits the silence of the crowd, listening, judging. Your answers come carefully. You speak of herbs gathered in the forest, of remedies taught by your mother or grandmother, of accidents that are only accidents. But words, once spoken, are fragile. They fall into the air and are carried away, reshaped in the ears of those who hear them. To one, your explanation may sound reasonable. To another, it may sound like evasion. To a third, it may sound like cunning. You cannot control how your words are heard, and so each one feels like a stone placed upon a scale you cannot see. As you answer, your eyes wander across the gathered villagers. Some meet your gaze briefly, then turn away. Some watch intently, as if eager for you to stumble. A few look uneasy, as if ashamed to be present at all. You recognize them all. The man who once asked you for help with his aching joints, the woman who brought her child to you in fever, the young girl you talked to find chamomile by the river. Their faces are familiar, but their eyes are not the same. They no longer look at you as neighbor, but as something different, something other. When the questions end, the priest leans back. His voice is calm, but edged with warning. He speaks of vigilance, of the need for purity, of guarding the flock against wolves. He does not accuse you outright, not yet, but his words lay the ground. They plant seeds in the minds of all who listen, seeds that will grow in the days ahead. The summons is over. You are told you may leave, but you know the leaving is not freedom. It is only a pause. The walk back feels longer than the walk there. The villagers no longer hide their glances. Some murmur openly now, their voices carrying words you cannot quite make out. At your cottage, the air feels changed. The walls are the same, the tools the same, the herbs still hang in their places. Yet everything carries the echo of what has just passed. The summons has marked you. You are no longer simply neighbor or healer. You are now something else in their eyes. Something named, though not yet spoken aloud. The days that follow are filled with waiting. You tend to your work, but your hands feel heavier. You walk the fields, but every sound seems sharper. Each knock at the door startles you. The villagers speak more freely now. Where once they whispered, now they mutter in daylight. Where once they hinted, now they state. The first summons was not an end. It was only a beginning. The shape of fear has stepped from the air into the room, and it will not leave quietly. Fear, once scattered, has now been given shape. It has a direction, a voice, a place to stand. The first summons did not silence suspicion, it fed it. It told the village that their whispers were worthy of being heard, that their fears deserved attention. And now, suspicion grows sharper. Where before there was unease, now there is certainty. Where before there were questions, now there are answers, or what passes for them. A circle has begun to form around you. It is invisible, but it is real. Each day the space within it grows smaller. Each day the circle tightens. In the days after the summons, you feel the change most in the smallest things. Neighbors who once walked beside you on the path now slow their steps, letting you move ahead alone. At the well, buckets are drawn up more quickly when you arrive. In the fields, the laughter of workers hushes when you draw near, only to resume once you have passed. It is not always cruel. Sometimes it is only quiet avoidance, a soft turning of the head, a silence too long to be accidental. But silence can wound as deeply as words. You feel it in your bones. You are no longer simply apart. You are being set aside. The stories that once began as whispers now retell themselves in brighter tones. A cow that died of sickness is no longer just sick. It was cursed. A storm that struck the fields is no longer chance. It was called forth. A child's fever, a broken cartwheel, a spoiled loaf of bread, all find their way back to your name. Each retelling grows sharper, surer. Details change, are forgotten, are invented, but each telling hardens belief until what was once rumor feels like memory, and what was once coincidence feels like proof. You do not need to speak. Your silence is filled by their stories. You notice now how closely you are watched. When you gather herbs at dawn, eyes follow from a distance. When you light a candle in the evening, shadows linger longer outside your window. When you walk through the market, heads turn to see what you touch, what you buy, what you leave behind. It is as if the village has appointed itself your guardian or your jailer. You live, still free to move where you will, yet every step feels measured, every gesture noted. The circle grows tighter with every glance. Those who once defended you now fall silent, not always from belief, but from fear. To speak against the chorus is to draw its suspicion. To show kindness is to risk sharing your shadow. And so friends grow cautious. They do not turn against you, not yet. But they no longer linger at your door. They no longer speak your name in defense when others accuse. Their silence is its own form of distance, as heavy as betrayal. You are left with fewer voices beside your own. Each Sunday, the sermons sharpen. The priest speaks now of weeds among wheat, of serpents hidden in grass, of the need for vigilance against evil in familiar forms. Still no name is spoken, but the villagers do not need it. Their eyes drift toward you as he speaks. Their hearts already know the shape they have given their fear. The church, once a place of solace, now feels heavy with judgment. Even the silence after prayer feels sharper, as if filled with unspoken thoughts. The village no longer waits for formal judgment to act. At your door you find small cruelties, a broken bundle of sticks, a smear of ash, a handful of salt scattered on your step. In the market, coins you offer are refused, bread withheld, goods not traded. When you pass a group of children, they mock you openly now, their rhymes harsher, their laughter bolder. These are not punishments handed down by law. They are punishments of community. Quiet but relentless, meant to wear you down. Each act tells you the same thing. The circle is closing. At night, even your dreams are unsettled. You wake to the sound of footsteps that vanish, to the creak of wood that falls silent, to the cry of an animal in the distance. You wonder if it is your imagination, sharpened by fear, or if truly someone lingers outside your home, waiting, watching. Sleep no longer brings rest. Each morning feels heavier than the last. It comes sooner than you expect. Another knock, another message. The elders wish to see you again. This time the tone is less gentle. The parchment carries more weight. When you arrive, the hall feels different. The crowd is larger, their faces more certain, their eyes sharper. The questions are not only curious now, they are accusatory. Did you place a curse upon your neighbor's child? Do you call upon spirits in the forest? Do you renounce the devil here before us all? The words fall heavily, each one carrying the force of belief already formed. Your denials feel thinner this time, less heard. You sense it in the silence after you speak. The circle has grown tighter still. After the second summons, life narrows further. You are no longer visited in secret for herbs. Those who once relied on you now turn elsewhere, even when their need is great. Hunger, pain, fever. They endure it rather than seek your help. Your days grow lonelier. Work continues, but it feels hollow. The garden blooms, but no one comes to admire it. The forest offers herbs, but no one asks for them. You are surrounded by people, yet you live apart. There is a silence that comes not from peace, but from pressure. A silence that says more than words. That silence now surrounds you. At the well, at the market, on the path. The space around you is quiet. Too quiet. Not out of respect, but out of exclusion. It is the silence of a circle tightening, of people drawing nearer to one another by stepping away from you. You feel it now, with certainty. This path leads forward in only one direction. The summons will return. The questions will sharpen. The circle will continue to close. It is not yet the end, but it is the narrowing before the end. The waiting, the knowing, the slow drawing of breath before the strike. You live in that waiting now, each day heavier, each glance sharper, each silence deeper. The circle tightens, and you are at its center. The narration softens, almost like a sigh. The air grows heavy, the circle grows smaller, and the space around you narrows, step by step, until there is nowhere left to stand. There comes a time when silence and whispers no longer suffice, when questions grow sharper, when fear grows louder, when the circle has tightened too much to remain only rumor. That time arrives as a summons, not to a hall of questions, but to a trial. It is not a trial in the way of fairness, nor of balance. It is not a weighing of truth against lies. It is a trial of shadows, a trial where suspicion itself is the witness, where fear itself is the judge, and where the outcome is written long before the first word is spoken. The morning begins with a sound heavier than usual. The church bell tolls, not for prayer, not for feast, but for gathering. Its echo spreads through fields and lanes, drawing villagers from their homes, their hands, their thoughts. When you hear it, you know what it means. This bell is not for all, it is for you. You step into the path once more. The air feels still, as if waiting. Faces appear at windows, at doorways. No one speaks, yet their silence follows you with every step. The trial of shadows has begun. The same hall that once held questions now feels altered. The benches are fuller, the air thicker. Torches line the walls, their light flickering against faces crowded close together. At the far end, the priest sits higher now, raised upon a chair that feels almost like a throne. Beside him, the elders, their expressions grave. Before them, a table, with parchment, ink, and the weight of judgment waiting to be written. The hall has become more than wood and stone. It has become a place of decision, a place of endings. The priest's voice fills the space. He speaks not of you directly at first, but of evil, of temptation, of the devil's work in the world. His words carry weight, crafted to stir unease, to make the crowd feel the presence of danger. Then, slowly, the words narrow. He names misfortunes one by one. The cow that sickened, the storm that struck, the child who wasted away. Each event spoken as if part of a pattern. Each one tied invisibly yet surely to you. And then the words sharpen into your name. Spoken not as neighbor, not as healer, but as accused. The charges are laid out, that you consort with spirits, that you curse crops, that you walk with darkness. The crowd murmurs, their voices like a restless tide. You are asked to speak, to defend. The silence of the hall presses upon you as you rise. You speak softly, steadily. You tell of herbs gathered with care, of remedies passed down, of accidents that are only accidents. You deny curses, deny spirits, deny all the words laid upon you. But the air feels heavy, unmoved. Your words fall into it like stones into deep water, sinking, vanishing, leaving no ripple. For here, in this place, defense is not truly sought. What is sought is confirmation. And your denial does not give it. Others are called to speak. One by one they step forward. A man tells of his cow, sickened after you passed. A woman tells of dreams filled with your shadow. Another claims he saw you in the forest at night, speaking words he could not understand. Some speak with trembling voices, unsure but compelled. Others speak with certainty, their words sharpened by belief. A few speak with eagerness, as if glad to be part of the telling. None bring proof, but proof is not asked for. The telling itself is enough. The trial is not only in words spoken at the front, it is in the weight of the crowd. Their eyes press upon you. Their murmurs rise and fall with each testimony. Their silence carries judgment as surely as the priest's voice. It is not a trial of law. It is a trial of community. And the community has already turned. The priest asks you to swear upon the cross that you are innocent. You place your hand upon it, your voice steady as you swear. But to some, your calmness is cunning. To others, your tremor is guilt. Whatever you do, it becomes what they already expect to see. You cannot escape the shape they have given you. Your denial, sincere as it is, folds itself into their suspicion, like shadow into shadow. The trial moves deeper, into questions not of action, but of faith. Do you renounce the devil? Do you accept the church's authority? Do you confess that you have been tempted? These are questions without safe answers. To renounce the devil is to suggest you were tempted. To claim temptation is to admit closeness. To remain silent is to seem defiant. Each answer is twisted, each silence reinterpreted. The circle has not only tightened, it has closed. When the questions end, the hall falls into silence. The priest's gaze lingers, heavy. The elders whisper together, their words too soft to hear. The crowd shifts, restless, their murmurs rising again, eager for a conclusion. You stand in that silence, knowing the outcome was written long before this day. The trial is not about what is true. It is about what is believed. At last, the priest speaks. He does not yet deliver final judgment. He speaks instead of further prayer, of more time to discern, of the need for fasting and reflection. The trial is not ended, but neither is it resolved. You are not freed nor condemned. You are simply suspended, held in a space between, while the weight of suspicion continues to grow. It is a waiting that feels heavier than any verdict. When you leave the hall, the village no longer looks the same. Faces watch more openly now. Children no longer sing only in jest, but with edge. Adults no longer whisper only in corners, but in the open air. The trial has given permission. What was once hidden is now spoken freely. The path home feels darker, though the sun may still shine. That night, the silence around your home is deep, too deep. You lie awake, listening to the stillness, certain that footsteps linger just beyond the door, that eyes watch through the dark. Perhaps it is only fear, or perhaps it is the beginning of something more. The trial of shadows has ended, but its echo has only begun. Truth has no place in such trials, only shadows and the weight they cast upon the living. The trial has passed, but the verdict has not. You walk away from the hall with no answer, no resolution, only a silence, heavy and unbroken, pressed upon you like a stone that does not shift. It is in this silence that the days begin to unfold. Not in freedom, not in condemnation, but in waiting. This is a waiting that is not measured by the clock or by the bell, but by the unease that fills every moment. The waiting becomes its own kind of sentence. Life continues, yet not as it once did. The villagers still rise at dawn, still walk the fields, still fetch water from the well. But beneath each action lies a pause, a glance, a murmur. When you walk by, conversations falter, hands still in their work, eyes follow you, some with pity, some with anger, some with the blankness of fear. The village is not only waiting for judgment upon you, it is waiting for its own release, to know whether it has cleansed itself of danger or must live beside it longer. You feel their waiting as much as your own. Each day stretches long. The morning bell still rings, but it no longer feels the same. Where once it was a rhythm of life, now it feels like a reminder of what lingers unspoken. You return to your tasks, gathering herbs, tending to your small garden, mending what is worn. But each action is accompanied by thought. Who watches from afar? Who whispers of curses as you pass? Even the soil seems heavier in your hands, as if weighed by the gaze of others. Children do not play as freely near your home. Some dare to come close, throwing stones or chanting names before fleeing. Others are pulled away by their mothers, their eyes downcast, their voices lowered. Neighbors pass more quickly now. Some cross themselves as they do. The suspicion has become part of the air, carried like smoke. You breathe it in, and it lingers. The priest does not call for you again, not yet. He speaks only to the villagers in sermons. His words fall upon them with weight, reminding them of vigilance, of the dangers that creep unseen, of the need for purity. He does not name you directly, but the shadows of his words always point in your direction. It is a silence that is louder than accusation, for in his restraint lies suggestion. It is in the nights that waiting becomes most difficult. The cottage is too quiet, too still. The fire burns low, and with each crackle of the wood you hear footsteps that are not there, whispers that vanish when you lean close. You lie awake, eyes open in the dark, listening for signs that may never come. The judgment has not been spoken, but its shadow already lies across your bed. Not all abandon you. A neighbor passes, quietly leaving bread at your door. Another comes under night's cover, seeking herbs for an ill child, their voice hushed, their gratitude whispered as if it were dangerous. These small acts of kindness remind you that suspicion is not the only force alive, yet they are fleeting, fragile. The villagers who come do so with care, knowing that kindness to the accused can itself be a mark of suspicion. Compassion, too, must wait in silence. As the days stretch on, the sky itself seems to echo the waiting. Storm clouds gather more often, the fields muddy, the air damp and heavy. The villagers see signs in this weather. They murmur that the heavens themselves are unsettled, that the skies cry for judgment. Superstition grows where silence lingers. Every drop of rain becomes a message, every gust of wind a warning. And always their eyes turn back toward you. Time passes, but it is not counted in feasts or festivals, not in work accomplished. It is counted in questions whispered, in sermons spoken, in the slow turning of suspicion into certainty. You do not know how long you must wait. A week, a month, longer. The elders deliberate not only in their meetings, but in their own hearts, and fear is a slow judge. Each sunrise is another reminder that the answer has not yet come. Each sunset, another descent into unease. Sleep brings little comfort. Dreams fill your nights, of fires, of hands pointing. In dreams, the verdict is always delivered and always the same. You wake with your chest tight, your heart racing. The cottage feels too small, the walls pressing close. You step outside into the night air, yet even under the stars you feel no release. The stars themselves seem to watch, distant and unblinking. As days pass, stories begin to grow. Children speak of shapes seen near your cottage at night. Farmers tell of fields that wither when you pass by. Women claim dreams of shadowy figures, linking them to your presence. These stories spread quickly, carried from mouth to mouth, changing as they go, growing with each telling. Truth is no longer needed. The waiting itself creates its own truths. And so you wait. Each sound in the distance makes you pause. Each knock at the door makes your breath catch. Each sermon tolls like a reminder that the moment of judgment has not been forgotten. Waiting becomes heavier than judgment itself, for judgment at least would end the silence. But waiting stretches endlessly, its weight pressing down with each passing hour. The village waits. You wait. Even the earth seems to wait. At last another evening comes. The fire burns low. The wind moves through the trees. You sit alone, listening to the stillness. Tomorrow may bring an answer, or it may bring only more waiting. You do not know. But for tonight, there is only this: the space between accusation and decision. The shadow of judgment, not yet spoken, yet already present. And the long night, waiting to pass. Waiting is not silence. It is its own voice, and it speaks without end. The waiting has stretched long. Days of silence, nights of unease, whispers that grew until they filled the air. Now at last, the stillness breaks. The bell tolls again. Not the morning bell for prayer, not the noon bell for work, but the heavy, deliberate toll that gathers the village together. The time of waiting is over. The time of judgment has come. You hear it before you see it. The sound rolling across fields, carried on cool air. It is a sound that has called many before, to feast, to worship, to mourning. But today, it calls for you. The messenger arrives, his words brief, his eyes lowered. You are summoned to the hall to hear the decision. You knew it would come, yet still the words strike like cold iron. You set aside what little work lies in your hands and begin the walk. The path feels narrower now. Doors stand open. Faces appear at windows. Villagers pause in their work as you pass. Some bow their heads. Some cross themselves. Some stare openly. No one speaks, but silence is its own voice. Children cluster close to their mothers, their eyes wide. Old men lean on their staffs, their gaze heavy, as though they have seen this before. The crowd gathers behind you, following your steps as though drawn by gravity. The walk is not yours alone. It is the village's walk, and you are at its center. The hall is lit with more candles than before. Their flames flicker in the dim air, throwing shadows long upon the walls. At the front sits the priest, his robes dark, his face solemn. Beside him, the elders, their expressions grave, their hands folded upon the table. Parchment lies before them, the ink already drying. The benches are full, every space taken. The hall feels close, heavy, as though the walls themselves lean inward. You are led to the center, standing before the priest's gaze. The murmurs fade, and silence fills the space. The priest begins not with your name, but with scripture. Words of warning, of temptation, of the evil that walks unseen in the world. He speaks of vigilance, of purity, of the community's sacred duty to cleanse itself of corruption. The villagers bow their heads, murmuring assent. The hall becomes a sea of agreement. Each nod, another weight upon your shoulders. Then at last, he speaks your name, and the hall seems to still even further. He names again the charges, that you consort with spirits, that you curse the fields, that you bring sickness and misfortune. The words are the same as before, but now they fall heavier, for they are no longer questions.
They are declarations, each one spoken as truth, not as doubt, each one carried by the weight of belief, not of proof. The elders rise, their voices joining the priests. They speak of deliberation, of prayer, of long nights spent seeking guidance. They speak of signs, of omens, of dreams that pointed toward danger. And then they speak of the need for action, for the safety of the village, for the purity of the faithful, for the will of God. The decision is written, they say. It cannot be undone. The priest's voice falls heavy as stone. You are guilty. Guilty of witchcraft. Guilty of consorting with darkness. Guilty of bringing harm upon your neighbors. The words hang in the air, unmoving, final. The sentence follows. You are to be taken, held, and made an example, for the good of the village, for the cleansing of its soul, for the warning of all who might follow your path. The sentence is not shouted. It is spoken slowly, solemnly, as though a prayer, but its weight is no less crushing. The hall stirs. Some gasp, some cross themselves, some nod as though relieved. A few murmur thanks to God, their voices trembling. There are no cries of joy, no cheers. This is not triumph. This is relief, heavy and uncertain, tinged with fear. For even as the verdict is spoken, shadows linger. If one can be guilty, then perhaps others can too. You stand as the words fall upon you. There is little left to say. No defense to offer, no plea that would shift the air. You feel the hall's gaze upon you, but your eyes remain steady. Inside, there is only stillness. The storm has already passed. What remains is quiet. You are not taken at once. The priest declares a final night of prayer. Tomorrow, the sentence will be carried forward. And so, once more, you walk the path through the village. But now it feels different. There is no uncertainty, no waiting. Only the slow walk of one who has heard their fate. Children no longer throw stones. Adults no longer whisper. They only watch, silent as you pass. The sun sets low, casting long shadows across the fields. Your cottage glows faintly with the last light, its walls familiar, its roof worn by years. You step inside, and the air feels heavier than before. This is the same room where you have eaten, worked, slept. And yet tonight it feels like a room apart, separated from all time before and all time after. The fire burns low. The herbs hang in their bundles. The bed waits, though sleep will not come. You sit in the stillness, listening to the quiet. The verdict has been spoken. The waiting is over. Night stretches long, each hour measured not by bells, but by the slow movement of shadows across the walls. You think of the days before, of mornings in the fields, of children's laughter, of neighbors' greetings. You think of the trial, the waiting, the judgment. And at last, you think of nothing. Only the silence, only the slow breath of night. The sentence has been spoken. The dawn will bring its weight. Judgment does not fall in a moment. It lingers, it echoes, it weighs. Long after the words have been spoken, it lives on in silence. The sentence has been spoken. The villagers have heard it. The priest has written it. The elders have agreed to it. And now, only one thing remains: the night before. It is a night unlike any other. Not because of sound or sight, not because of weather or season, but because of what it holds, a stillness so deep that it feels as though time itself has paused, watching, waiting. You return to your home for the last time. The door creaks as it always has. The floor bends beneath your steps as it always did. The fire is kindled once more, its glow faint against the walls. But everything feels changed. The air is too heavy, the shadows too long. This familiar place has become both sanctuary and cell. You move slowly through the room, your hands brushing the wooden table, the bundles of herbs, the chair worn smooth by years of use. Each touch lingers. Each detail fixes itself in memory, as though part of you knows it will not return again. Bread rests upon the table, left by a quiet hand earlier in the day. A neighbor's kindness, unspoken, unacknowledged. You break it carefully, eating slowly, though hunger does not truly rise. The taste is plain, the texture rough. Yet tonight, it feels sacred, not because of flavor, but because of finality. Each bite is not nourishment, but farewell. To food, to life, to the simple act of eating in solitude. The night is long, and you half expect the knock of a friend, a whisper of support, a final visit. But no one comes. Those who pity you stay in silence, afraid to be seen. Those who fear you keep their distance, even now. Those who accused you wait for morning. And so the night belongs to you alone. Through the small window the sky spreads wide. The moon is pale, thin, a quiet witness. Stars scatter faintly, blurred by thin clouds. You look out, your eyes lingering on constellations long known. Shapes once tied to stories, to guidance, to comfort. Tonight, they feel different. Not like companions, not like guardians, only distant lights, silent, watching as the earth prepares to let you go. The fire burns low, crackling softly. Its warmth is faint, but its sound fills the silence. You sit close, your hands stretched to the glow. Shadows dance upon the walls, moving gently, almost as though alive. For a moment, it is easy to imagine that nothing waits beyond this room, that the trial never came, that the sentence was never spoken, that life remains as it always was. But the fire shifts and the thought fades. The truth returns with the smoke. Memories come in slow waves, of mornings in the fields, dew upon the grass, of children's laughter ringing clear across the lane, of herbs gathered in quiet forests, their scents carried home on your clothes. These memories are soft, ordinary, yet they feel sharper tonight. Every detail stands clear, as though the mind clings to them, knowing it has only this one last chance to hold them close. From beyond the walls, faint noises drift in. A dog barking once, then falling silent. A door closing, the wooden latch echoing across the stillness. The murmur of villagers in their homes, low voices blurred by distance. Life continues for them. Tomorrow, it will continue still. But for you, the thread is about to break. You lie upon your bed, but sleep does not come. Your body turns, your eyes open and close, your breath catches in shallow rhythm. It is not fear alone that keeps you from sleep. It is the knowledge that to close your eyes is to let time pass faster, that waking brings the morning closer. And so you resist. You hold on to each moment, even as your body aches with weariness. In the dark, words come unbidden. Not the prayers spoken in the church, not the verses demanded by the priest, but quiet words, whispered only in thought. They are not pleas for mercy. They are not bargains or bargains broken. They are simply words of release. A prayer not for judgment to be undone, but for the heart to remain steady. The night moves slowly, each hour distinct. First the fire burns bright, filling the room with soft glow. Later the flames shrink, leaving only embers, red and faint. Later still, darkness grows deeper and the air cools. You mark the hours not by clocks, but by the fire's life, by the shifting silence, by the weight in your chest. Time becomes heavy, yet fragile, each moment both endless and fleeting. At last, your eyes close. For a moment, sleep takes you. You dream of walking through the fields, the grass tall, the sky wide. The village is behind you, distant, almost forgotten. The path stretches forward toward a horizon without end. No voices call you back. No judgment follows. Only silence, open and free. Then you wake, the dream fading like mist. The walls return, the fire gone to ash, the sentence waiting. At last, dawn comes. The window glows faintly, a pale light rising in the sky. The night is over. You rise slowly, your body heavy, your eyes hollow from wakefulness. The last night has passed. The day has come. You stand for a moment in the quiet cottage, taking in its walls, its hearth, its small comforts one final time. And then you step toward the door. Story folding to stillness. The night before is not only an ending, it is a passage from silence into silence, from shadow into shadow. And so life passes quietly, a mixture of work, suspicion, care, and solitude. No trials, no flames, just the gentle weight of being seen as different. When we look back on the 14th century, we often think of battles and kings, plagues and wars. But here, in the quiet margins, life was lived in smaller rhythms, in bread baked at dawn, in herbs gathered by hand, in stories told by firelight. If you were called a witch, it was less about spells and more about being seen as other. Yet, beneath it all, you still lived, you still breathed, you still found moments of peace. And now, let that life drift away like smoke into the night air. Rest gently and sleep well.